Good morning, Judith.
Good morning, Rehana.
Thank you so much for agreeing to talk about your lived experience on today, which is a very important day because it's World Bipolar Day. Without further ado, I'm just going to say a little bit about this amazing lady, Judith Critchley, who is a mental health advocate, and she has been championing mental health rights for many, many years in the work environment and in communities. And she is a comedian, and she'll correct me if I've got it wrong. And she's also a single parent. She has often shared her experiences with us at Jamila's Legacy as well. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this today with us. Judith, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words? Because I don't think I've done justice.
My name is Judith, and I live in Leicester, and I have two teenage children. I'm a single parent. I'm a comedy promoter, but I've lived with bipolar disorder since I was 16 when I was diagnosed, and I'm 45 now, and I'm pretty stable. I have been stable with my mental health for some time now, which is really fortunate. And I'm very open about my lived experiences of having bipolar disorder and living with it, and I have wanted to do that because of my experiences of stigma in the workplace and in my family and in the community, which can prevent people from seeking help and getting support.
Thank you. I mean, you've raised lots of points there, but I thought, could we first of all start with what is bipolar disorder? Are you able to explain maybe your experience? Because I know that it would be different for individual people, but how does bipolar affect you?
Well, so I'm diagnosed with bipolar 1, which is where you've had to have at least one psychotic episode and been hospitalised, I believe. So that was the diagnosis when I was 16. And then I've been on medication I was on medication as a teenager and then only went back on it again in my 30s. So it affects me in terms of I need to accommodate it in my daily life. So to maintain the stability and feeling like I have the energy to cope with looking after my children and running a home, etc., and enjoying my life, I have to factor in times where I'm active, but then I've got time when I rest as well. Because in the past, I've crammed lots of things in together and then I'll just crash. So I think it's been important for me to learn that, for example, with a job I've started recently, I work 3 days a week, but with a day in between to rest, because that allows me to complete the job, and it's being realistic that I couldn't do a full-time job and maintain that. So it's about looking at what's possible, what's realistic for my circumstances as well, because I've got to look after my children as well. Um, so so it affects me in terms of, I take medication, I take lithium, I take antidepressants.
Yeah.
Um, so it's and I have to make sure that I have a blood test every 3 months to check the level of lithium in my blood
Okay.
to make sure it's still working. So it's a sort of job in itself,
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think you've highlighted how important that balance is for you, even more so with having bipolar, this condition, and managing it. So it's an everyday thing from what I'm hearing from you, and being mindful how you're taking care of yourself and how quickly things can spiral if you don't manage your and prioritize your mental well-being. obviously you can't predict all eventualities. There's always going to be stressful situations and things that come up which you can't plan for. But if you plan for the things that you do know are coming up and you're realistic, as you said, I think they're really good tips for anybody. But I think people out there who perhaps are, you know, in similar positions to you, or people who are supporting or caring or know somebody who has a bipolar disorder, I think it gives them a really good understanding as well, because I think there isn't enough knowledge out there. There, you know, often people are isolated because the people, the family, their support networks around them don't understand, you know, and when there isn't the understanding, I think there's less compassion and empathy and less willingness to listen to what's actually happening to the person. So I think you know, it's really important that people educate themselves. So Judith, you said you had an episode when you were 16. So what brought you to the point that you were hospitalized and got a diagnosis? Did you access other services before, or you know, what happened?
So I was seeing a counsellor at my local, when I was doing my GCSEs,
Yeah.
and I think without my parents knowing, I just got that support. Um, I think, I mean, I've had lots of counselling to understand
Yeah.
what was going on in my family at that time, and sort of the relationship I had with my parents, etc., and my brother. Um, so I'd been depressed for some time, and then had a period of um, probably unhealthy behaviour in terms of perhaps over exercising, and my sleep started to be affected. Um, and then I ended up going into my college and sort of telling people that I was going away. I got no plans, but I was saying I was going to America and I was see you everyone, and I was just boldly, you know, I was quite
Yes.
shy. I was boldly going into my classrooms and saying see you. So my parents were called, and then I was the GP came out and psychologist, and I ended up in the Brandon unit, which I don't think exists now.
That's right. That
Um,
used to be at the General Hospital, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
so no, um, so it was kind of a period of where um, so I became psychotic, and then I was in hospital, and then I was treated for just 2 weeks, and then I came home, and then my parents looked after me. But in terms of like, because I was sleeping a lot, and you know, on this new medication, you know, I was only young, so it was
Yeah.
quite a profound effect, really. So I think it was a scary time for not just me, but for my parents, because with mental ill health, you can't say when that person's going to be better, you know,
That's
or
right.
what is better going to be look like.
Yeah.
Are they going to be different? What support will they need? So I think at that time, that was in the 90s, where there wasn't much talk about mental health in terms of looking after your mental health and different conditions. So I suppose I wasn't really aware fully of what the condition meant, how to manage it, and support. So I didn't have any of that really, because my psychiatrist was just keen on monitoring my lithium levels. My parents weren't really keen on getting any further support. I think it's just the shame about it, you know.
Yes.
It's let's not make a big deal of it. Let's just hope it,
Goes away.
yeah, fizzles out. And
Yeah.
so I kind of, that was something I carried with me, and still obviously experienced the highs and lows. I was on no medication when I was at university, none when I had my children, and then it was only really when I separated from my husband that I went back into the mental health system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think having, you know, big life events and changes in our lives, that has an impact anyway on our mental health.
Mm.
So, you know, for somebody who has a condition, it can exacerbate everything even more so. You mentioned stigma and shame, and I wondered whether you'd discuss that with me a little bit? As we know that, mental illness in general and people who have a mental health condition or struggling with their mental health in any way, are less likely to open up or reach out for help because of the shame and stigma attached to it, because of the way society perceives people who, have mental health problems. So wanted to hear a little bit more about that shame and stigma that you mentioned and your experiences.
Well, I think that I found it stifling because um, it didn't. It sort of stopped me from being fully aware of what was happening to me. So I don't think I was an easy person to sort of be around because I was at university. I was very, I would say, depressed for
Okay.
the whole time, and so and that there was I had I did have recognitions of this isn't right, but I didn't really know where to go, who to speak to, and I just didn't really say a lot about it. And my parents, I was struggling at university, and my parents didn't really want to, I think, acknowledge that I was. They didn't sort of say, "Come home, Judith. Just
Yeah.
we'll find it another. You can go to university in Leicester, or perhaps take some time out." So I did the 3 years.
Wow. That
But
must
then,
have been a challenge.
yeah, I mean, I got my degree,
Well done, in
but
spite of all that.
but it was, I'd been a good student at, my GCSEs and A levels, and then it just all went wrong,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think that was hard. I think you want your children to be happy, and it's almost like off you go.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's quite frightening, isn't it? Because not everybody's ready for that, especially if you think about you were the tender age of 16,
Mm,
when you got diagnosed.
mm,
So, and then on all this medication, on this medication,
mm.
which would have its own side effects as well.
Yeah,
And to still be depressed and have bipolar disorder and then go on to university, that big change away from home, losing your support network. It must have been huge. I can't even imagine. I have no idea how you managed to get through and, get the 3 years done and gain your degree. Well done, you.
well, I think it was an enormous effort, but a cost to my health. But
Yes.
um, and I sort of left university in the third year, and I went back and did exams, and I just couldn't. I didn't complete my dissertation, and I just wanted to go home. But my parents were sort of a bit flustered about it, and sort of not accepting that this was something I had. It was, oh, you're not going on antidepressants again, are you? And
Yeah.
type of thing.
And I suppose that's the lack of knowledge. And if we think about the past, and we didn't have the information we have now, and if we talk about, our previous generations, they may perceive mental health even now very differently to how we do. And if we look at your children and my children, they will see it differently. So
Yeah,
having that information, knowledge, the perceptions, all of that, and some of it is baggage we've inherited, isn't it?
yeah,
Other people's thinking. And
yeah,
so that shame, or sometimes somehow this is a failure if I take medication and I rely on, something to support me to cope.
yeah,
Sometimes it's seen as a weakness. So you're absolutely right. So that's another barrier, isn't it, of why people won't seek help,
yeah,
and won't speak out and say, actually, no, I'm actually not okay. I am struggling. And we're worried about people's responses. We don't know what they'll be. And there's that fear of then, people judging us, and that further then makes us withdraw, and then it causes more pain,
yeah,
so and this is what we're trying to do here, Judith, is we're trying to address that and end that stigma and say there's no shame. Uh, People who struggle with mental health problems are the same as anybody else, and we all have feelings, and we love and we feel and we care, and we have so much to contribute to society, just like you are making people laugh in the world. So I mean, isn't that a fantastic gift that you have, Judith? It must give you immense pleasure to make people laugh. and at the same time, you know, it's great for your mental well-being.
Yes, yes, I think so. It's finding things that give me pleasure and joy, and in amongst all this, really.
Thank you, Judith. Any final messages for anybody who's watching this video?
I think it is to find somebody, well, that you trust, a good friend, a therapist, a good GP, a helpline, where you can say how you feel and be yourself and not hide anything, and for not to be judged, basically, for someone to listen. What the ideal thing is, and I've found it now, that I have a support network where they will listen to me, they won't judge me. My children sometimes laugh about me, you know, and how I need rest and things like that, but because I'm open about it, I think, and I've found people that will say to me, will accommodate me, and I won't be afraid to say, look, I can't make this
Yes.
because I'm too tired.
Yeah.
And we rearrange, you know. So I think it's definitely about trying to find somewhere where you can be open about your mental health, and you can have someone can listen to you, and that can be an immense relief.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's some really, really good advice. But that whole, you know, message of having a support network that understands you and gets you, and having an environment where you're able to be yourself and be accepted as you are, I think is really important. And that's a really, you know, good point to end on. Thank you so much, Judith. Really appreciate you talking to me. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
You're
Bye.
welcome.